So now you should have your first impression and a few words of description. I'm hoping that once again we'll see lots of musical words in there. Uh, will show a bit of your musical literacy that we've been developing over the semester. At this point, we need to add a little bit of information so that you can do a bit of analysis and have some background in this kind of music and the kind of structures that are usually found in these kinds of songs. Now this is Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie was born in 1912 in Oklahoma, in a very small town in rural Oklahoma called Okemah. And it was a very small town, probably not much different than Athens, until in the 1920s oil was discovered. And for a brief but quite intense time, it was a very rich town, and was like a real boom town for a little while, just when Woody Guthrie would have been growing up. Very early in the 30s, though, Okemah went bust because the oil dried up, and suddenly Okemah was caught up in the dirty 30s, just the way the rest of Oklahoma and the rest of the much of the United States was. So that's Woody's background. Musically, rural Oklahoma was very much a society where music was important, where music was part of the social fabric. Everybody played a guitar. There's a number of quotations where Woody said everybody played something. And Woody got to play guitar and sing a little bit, and during the 1930s joined a couple of different singing groups. He eventually came to be known as the voice of the common man. He sang songs for the working man, for the farmer, for the people that were really suffering from the Depression. You'll remember from your history courses that the Depression lasted throughout the 1930s and was a pretty tough time for farmers, especially for rural people in general, for the working man. At the same time that things were pretty tough for the working man, there were pockets of extreme wealth in America especially, Canada too, but America especially, and that's what Woody Guthrie was writing about. And Woody Guthrie both took the side of the poor, or the side of the common man, and also went pretty strongly after the affluent, went pretty strongly after the rich in his song lyrics and in the way he lived his life and in the political stands that he took. Now part of this is kind of the legend of Woody Guthrie, and part of it is the truth of Woody Guthrie. I'm not going to go into a lot of it here today, but if you're at all interested, it's a pretty interesting, fascinating story, so I'd encourage you to spend a little time looking up Woody Guthrie on the web or reading a little bit more about Woody Guthrie. But I am going to talk a little bit about the form of music, and it's a form of music that Woody Guthrie made famous. He didn't invent it. It was started by another fellow by the name of Chris Bouchillon. And Chris Bouchillon was a country singer in the 1920s and 30s, and he started out the talking blues as kind of rural comedy, a way of just having fun and poking fun at some of the problems people were facing. Woody Guthrie took that kind of fun, kind of comic rural format and turned it into eventually quite a powerful form of political statement. And that powerful form of political statement was picked up by people like Bob Dylan in the 1960s. You'll hear some echoes of it in Country Joe McDonald at Woodstock in '69. And you continue to hear echoes of that kind of poetry and politics in rap music today and in some other forms of country and popular music. In terms of form, it's actually fairly simple. A talking blues is usually a spoken poem, really, that takes place over a 3-chord progression. Now, we know about 3-chord progressions from our blues progressions. The talking blues progressions don't tend to be 12-bar progressions, but they do tend to be progressions of the 1st, 4th, and 5th degrees of the scale, just like the 12-bar blues. But they're not really of any set length. Sometimes there'll be 8 bars, sometimes 10, sometimes 12, and I'll explain why that is, why that happens. The talking blues are put together in 2 rhyming couplets, and then it's followed by a little section of what's called free verse, or kind of unrhyming poetry. Here's an example of what I mean by that. So the song you listened to was called Mean Talkin' Blues. And here's a stanza from the Mean Talkin' Blues. I'm the meanest man that ever had a brain. All I scatter is aches and pains. I'm carbolic acid and a poison face, and I stand flat-footed in favor of crime and disgrace. Never done a good deed, and I'm sorry of it. So you can see from that structure that what we have is a rhyme scheme that's A, A, B, B. That is, the rhymes in the last words in the first 2 lines rhyme, and the last words in lines 3 and 4 rhyme, and then a little paragraph of free verse. What I mean by free verse is it's kind of poetry, kind of poetic, but it doesn't rhyme with anything. Here's another example from the same song that we just listened to, Mean Talkin' Blues. I'm mean in the east, I'm mean in the west, mean to the people that I like best. So those 2 lines have rhymed. I'm going to go around causing lots of accidents, and I'll push folks down, and I'll cause train wrecks. Now, accidents and wrecks are kind of a close rhyme, so that's the B line. And now he goes into kind of a little paragraph. I'm a big disaster, just going somewhere to happen. I'm an organized famine, studying how I can be a little bit meaner. I'm still a whole lot too good to suit myself. I'm just mean. So there we've got several lines of free verse poetry. Don't rhyme with anything at all, just spoken in rhythm to the recurring chord progression that's going to go on underneath. The Talkin' Blues went on to be one of the most important forms of protest songs. It was picked up by people like Pete Seeger and the Weavers, Bob Dylan, as I mentioned, and continues to have influence on rap music, on story music, and protest music in general. Once again, if you're interested, I'd really encourage you to listen to a little bit more Woody Guthrie. Not all of Woody is talking blues. He wrote a lot of other kind of music. One piece you'll probably recognize is "This Land Is Your Land." That's a Woody Guthrie song. So, that's Woody. That's Mean Talkin' Blues. Now, time to fill out the final impression section of your chart.